Welcome to Raja Reads. I'm Masood Raja, and on this channel I introduce you to literature and fiction works from all over the world. Today I'll be talking about one novel from Sudan called The Season of Migration to the North by Tayeb Salih. Now, Tayeb Salih published this novel in 1969 in Arabic first, and in Arabic it is called Al-Mawsum al-Hijra il-al-Shamal, Season of Migration to the North. Tayeb Salih was also granted quite a few awards because of his literary works. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details of the novel, but the novel is set in northern Sudan. Now, if you know your world, you know that Sudan just recently got divided into southern and northern Sudan, and they became two different countries. But the main setting, main story of the novel happens in a small village by the river Nile. If you look at the river Nile, it comes from the north, from Egypt, and enters Sudan. And mostly the story focuses around the peasant life and people who live in the village. Our narrator in this entire novel is unnamed, and as the novel starts, we find out that he has just returned from England after having finished his PhD in humanities. And as he's meeting his relatives, he meets this stranger who's not from that village, and he's told that this person has moved from Khartoum to the village, and his name is Mustafa Saeed, and that's where we get hooked in as readers, because Mustafa Saeed is offered as this mysterious figure, and our narrator is curious about him. So the novel ultimately ends up being about Mustafa Saeed, and we learn as we read that he's not just a simple farmer. He didn't just move from Khartoum, that he has lived a whole life in England, got his education there, was a prominent economist, had published books. And so it's that secret that we seek as we read the novel. Who is Mustafa Saeed? What did he do in England? Why did he come to this village? And then part of the story is about the local culture, right? The patriarchal aspects of it. What happens to women if their husbands die, right? And a lot of reflection about the politics of Sudan after it gains its independence from the British. So if you're really interested in a novel that gives you beautifully rendered characters placed within the Sudanese rural landscape, and a narrative that is kind of filled with the history of the local places, history of colonialism, but then deep story of one problematic character who had traveled to Europe and done some really, really questionable things, and his return to this village, this is the novel to read. Also within that is another character, Reyes, who is also kind of a predatory male, and we read about his actions as well. So overall, I don't want to give away too much, right? But to me, stylistically, this is a modernist novel. There is a secret that we have to read the novel to find out. And the suspense is built through hints over here, through our narrator's encounters with Mustafa Saeed, with other people, with Europeans, who all build up on our knowledge about Mustafa Saeed. And our narrator then finds the ultimate truth in Mustafa Saeed's house in the village, where he had built a room whose key he had left to our narrator, right? And as he opens it, he finds out a whole visual and written record of Mustafa Saeed's actions in England. A lot of people read it as a tragedy of colonial revenge by an African male in Britain. I tend not to read like that, but I would love to hear your views about it. The novel will also be really instructive for anyone who wants to see a stylized representation, a literary representation of the Muslim village culture of Sudan. What is the division of labor? What's the place of women in it? What do men do? How do they see their own central government as the new nation is developing and emerging? And then how do they see themselves within the historical framework within which they exist, the colonial and post-colonial? So anyone who's interested and curious about Sudan and wants to know at least some particular aspects of the North Sudanese culture and references to Sudan's colonial history, this would be a great starting point. Now, we all know that no novel can carry the burden of an entire nation. You cannot just read Season of Migration to the North and get to know Sudan, right? But one thing that good literature also does is that more than just making us fall in love with characters or the stories, what it also does is it opens a window into a larger story, a larger culture, a larger history. And I think when you read this novel, maybe for the first time you'll be reading a literary rendition of Sudanese life, and maybe that will open a door for you to explore further, to get to know more about Sudan, the Sudanese people, their history, and their culture. And if that's one mission that we might give to a literary novel, I think this novel absolutely fulfills that mission of making us curious about Sudan, about Sudanese culture, Sudanese life, and then the experiences and struggles of a person like our narrator, who is unnamed, in that culture as someone who had gone abroad and studied and got a degree in humanities and now works for the government but is still deeply in touch with people in his village, feels responsible for them, right? Feels responsible for Husna, who was Mustafa Said's wife, and her 2 children. All of these things are interwoven within the fabric of the novel. And I highly recommend it. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I don't do that this is a 4-point novel or 5-star novel. That's for you to decide. All I would encourage you to do is to pick up this novel. It's a fairly quick read, even though what it deals with are serious and dense issues. I'm pretty sure if you're a quick reader, you should be able to read it in about 2 hours. Now, after you've read it, you'll probably be thinking about it for the rest of your life, but then that is what a good novel ought to do. So, without belaboring the point too much, Tayeb Salih from Sudan, one of the most prominent Arab authors, and this is his book, Season of Migration to the North, and I highly recommend it. Thank you so much, and if you read it and have any questions, please post them in the comments. If something comes to your mind about the book, or if you've already read it and you would like to share your thoughts with me, share them with me and everyone else on this channel in the comments, and I'll be very happy to receive your comments and respond to them. That is all from me. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I will see you next time. Until then, peace and love.